the mute button off. That's the first thing to do.
Being recorded.
Are we good? Okay.
We're good.
Afternoon, everyone. Hello. I think Tracy's got the usual slides to share, which I can just go through quickly. Is that right, Tracy? She says optimistically.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Can people see them then? Because I can just see you at the minute.
Let's have a look.
Can other people see the slides?
No.
That's better. Right. Okay. So this is the picture as of the 16th of September. As you can see, it's continuing to be reasonably good news. So we're seeing a continuing downward trend, probably plateauing out at something like 1 in 100 people. So we're seeing a nice steady low rate at the moment, which is not to say that we won't have a winter wave. I think we should probably be braced for that at some stage, but at the moment it's steady away and nicely down from where we were in the summer. Tracy, do you have the next slide, please? Brilliant. So again, you can see you've got, it's going to be no good me pointing at my screen, but you can see that we've got a nice clear curve there and dropping nicely down to a much lower level again. Next slide, please. And again, nice downward slope. Go away, cat. Next slide, please, Tracy. Yep, so that's age. Everything going downwards to that sort of 1 in 100, fairly steady, fairly low background level. We may see, obviously everybody will know the schools have gone back. That may lead to a bit of a resurgence in absolutely everything, including COVID, because we all know what happens when the children go back to school. But we shall see. Next slide, please. Okay. So again, staying reasonably low. That's 30, just over 30 people in hospital with COVID in mid-Yorkshire hospitals, which is, is not to say COVID has entirely disappeared by any means, but if you look at July, when we had about 120, and you look back to January of this year when we had 250 to 300, it's a much more pleasing drop. So next slide, please. And that's showing again that Sarah will talk to you about the vaccine in a minute, I think. And while we would like to be seeing those deaths at zero, we are seeing a continuing very low numbers and compared to what we had earlier in the pandemic. And once again, I think that reflects the really good protection from severe disease that we're getting from the vaccines. And I think, Kat, excuse me, I think we do not want to see. Sorry, I'm getting mixed up there. I think obviously we want to see that protection from severe disease continuing. So that will underline, I think, the importance of getting a good uptake for the autumn booster campaign. So I think that's the final slide, Tracy. Yeah.
It is, yes, thank you.
So probably happy to take any questions, but I think the most interesting thing might be to hand over to Sarah to talk about the practicalities of the autumn booster. But any questions at all, very happy to do my best to answer.
Thank you ever so much, Claire. And it's lovely to see a cat.
Yes, I wasn't sure you needed to see him having a wash right in the middle of the COVID update.
That's so funny. I'm just going to have a look and see if we've got anything in our chat. No camera on my we've sorted that out. I don't think there's any questions in the chat, none that I can see. If anybody wants to shout out, please do. Or you're very welcome to email me or email the COVID Champions box, which is ccc@wakefield.gov.uk, and I will pass any questions on to Claire. So thank you ever so much, Claire.
Okay,
I very much appreciate you taking time.
Not at all. I'll stay on for the vaccine bit at least. I may need to leave you after that if there's no specific questions. But
that's fine. Thank you so much. So Sarah, thank you too for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you. So welcome everybody. Somebody reminded me yesterday that we are now almost exactly 2 years into the vaccination programme, because it was the end of September, early October 2 years ago that we were starting to plan our first vaccinations, and it's starting to feel a bit more like business as usual for us now to do that. So I'm the Senior Programme Manager in the NHS, and I work for West Yorkshire ICB technically, but part of the Wakefield District Health and Care Partnership arrangements. Can I have the first slide, please? Thank you. So I've only got 3 slides today, and I'm not going to try and go through every bit of detail in the programme. I'm going to try and give you a reasonable overview to get started in understanding what is being offered this season. So first of all, we'll talk about who is eligible for a booster. So we really split the programme down into the current campaign, which is seasonal autumn boosters, and the evergreen offer. So the seasonal autumn booster, which we're administering at the moment, is a COVID bivalent booster. And what that bivalent means is that it provides protection against both the original, what they call the wild strain of COVID, but it's also had an additional element of the vaccine added to it, which has been created, which targets a bit more closely the Omicron variant, which, as people will know, is what was in circulation at this time last year and is actually continuing to circulate. So it's a slightly next generation vaccine, but it's created in the same way. We're seeing the similar sort of reaction to it when people have had their booster, but it does provide a little bit more protection against one of the strains which is currently circulating. So that seasonal autumn booster is being offered to people who are up to date with their primary course and boosters. So somebody who's had all the doses which they're eligible for up to now will be offered it if they are over 50 or at clinical risk if they're over the age of 5 because of some underlying condition. They'll be offered it if they are a household contact of a patient who is immunosuppressed or a frontline health and social care worker, or because they're a resident in a care home or staff working in the care home. And there's a slight distinction there between frontline health and social care workers and staff in care homes. All staff in care homes will be offered it. So if you're the cook in the kitchens, you will still be offered that. And then carers over 16 will also be eligible for their booster. So this is people who are fully up to date. The booster that they will be offered is a COVID bivalent this autumn. So you can kind of look at that list and say who isn't eligible. And very simply, it's anybody who is under 50 who isn't in a clinical risk group will not be offered the booster this autumn. And this comes back to what Claire was saying about the distinction between the protection that's offered by the booster being about preventing serious illness. We know that many younger people have got good immunity from the vaccinations they've already had, or from them having, in addition, having caught COVID and having had a mild case of it. And the decision has been made by JCVI that those patients, those younger patients who don't have underlying health conditions, won't benefit from receiving a booster. So I think that's useful to know. The evergreen offer then, so this is for people who haven't had those primary doses, and most people will be offered, have already been offered 2 doses, a first and a second dose, and a booster. The only exception to those who've already been offered a booster before this autumn is people who are in the age group 5 to 15 who aren't in a clinical risk group. So there is a slight oddity this year, which is that if somebody didn't get around to getting their booster last year and they're between the ages of 18 and 49, they might actually come and get their booster this autumn. And then somebody who did get the booster last autumn in that same age group won't get their booster. Unfortunately, that just is the reality of the programme. We don't want to reduce the likelihood of somebody getting that protection from having had their first booster. But I don't think it introduces anything that's unfair. It's just catching that person up and making sure that they are protected in the same way as their next door neighbour who's the same age group. Okay. A couple of bits of detail. A seasonal booster can only be given if it's more than 91 days since somebody had their last jab for whatever reason. And if somebody has a booster this season, if they're that person who missed last year's and have now caught up, they won't be offered another one this year. So once you've had your seasonal booster this year, you're up to date again. And I think it's worth being aware that almost everybody who is eligible this season for a COVID booster is also going to be eligible for a flu booster and will be offered one. It may not necessarily be at the same time. However, I know Claire will support me in this. We strongly recommend that people come and get their flu booster when they're offered. You need both to be fully protected. I think what we've seen in other parts of the world is that the flu season has hit them quite early and hard and then gone away relatively quickly. But we would really encourage people to not see yourself as fully protected until you've had both. There's no evidence if you have them both on the same day while you're sitting in the chair with your jacket off that your immune reaction the following day is any worse. So I'm certainly aiming to have both of mine at the same time and get them done and dusted and out of the way and get that protection. Okay, so that's everybody who is eligible. Could we have the next slide then, please? So the next question that people then ask is, well, when will I be vaccinated if I am eligible? And the thing that we're stressing at the moment is that we strongly recommend that people wait to be invited by their GP or by the NHS website. The important thing at the moment is that we actually started in care homes 2 weeks ago yesterday. So we're doing really well with our care home programme. And then we opened fully to patients last week. So that was Monday the 12th. We've already vaccinated well over 12,000 people. So that's about 7.5% of the people who will get their autumn booster this year have already come forward and had that. However, we're very busy at sites and I don't want people to worry if they maybe go online and look for a booking and they're not offered something for 10 days. It's simply that we are working through people in this order. So the priority order reflects the risk that those patients face. So we started in care homes a week before we started the public programme. Housebound patients, they're now underway and they take quite a long time to get through because each one is a special visit. And we opened last week for over 75s, and then by midweek we were inviting people in the over 65s group to start to make their booking. And at-risk patients are also now receiving text messages asking them to book. And at the same time, we're vaccinating our health and care workers because we know that if we provide protection to the people who are treating patients, that are less likely to catch and then pass on the illness. So that means that a lot of people will now have an appointment in the diary, even if it's 2-3 weeks in the future. We'll be opening soon for 5 to 17-year-old boosters. And also by mid-October, we will be open for bookings for 50 to 65-year-olds. The reason that the boosters for 5 to 17-year-olds are maybe coming a little bit later, even though they are being offered to at-risk patients, is that it's only next week that we get a particular booster type which has been approved for use in the under 18s. So this is, at the moment, we're vaccinating with the Moderna bivalent type, and it's also known as Spikevax. Next week, we'll also have Pfizer or Comirnaty bivalent. So they're almost interchangeable. There's very little difference between them. If you're offered one, I would just accept whichever one is offered. However, the one that's been tested and trialed and approved for use in under 18s is the specific Pfizer one. And we always have to remind people that the evergreen offer is still there. We were pretty busy just before we started doing boosters, and I think there was a kind of a back to school offer, and whether it was families or children and even some adults thinking, you know what, I know that boosters are starting soon, so I'll get my doses up to date before people get busy, and that was fine. We're now seeing about just over 100 people a week coming forward and having one of those catch-up doses. But we want to stress that if there's anybody who is thinking, has the ship sailed? Have I missed out? No, if you are due a dose, you will be able to book and get that. So we are still open for business. When can I be vaccinated? So we've talked about when we start. There's also when we finish. So we're aiming to have the majority of doses in arms, and this is both COVID and flu, by early December. And that's the kind of the sweet spot before flu's normally really active. And we're hoping that it will give lots of people protection so that we don't have lots of symptomatic cases of COVID out in the community. So I think that's our aim, and we're working towards that. I'm just checking that I've covered everything I thought that I needed to. I think that's okay. So can we have the next slide, please? Okay. So we talked about who is going to be vaccinated and when, and then the final question is where can you be vaccinated? So many people will have been for a vaccine or be aware that we used to have a site called Navigation Walk, which was near the Hepworth Gallery, just over the river. That's now been relocated to the Queen Elizabeth Vaccination Centre, and I think we're all really proud that we went with that name because of everything that's happened this year. So the Queen Elizabeth Vaccination Centre is really near Pinderfields. It's on the road that goes into Eastmoor. It's Queen Elizabeth Road. It used to be the Wakefield Intermediate Care Unit. It's a lovely site. It's a little bit smaller than Navigation Walk, but it's got dedicated parking and it's all ground floor. So it's a lot easier for us to work with than Navigation Walk. I'm just going to pop in the chat a link to a YouTube walkthrough of QEVC if anyone's interested. So that's presented by the Vaccination Centre Manager, Claire Moore, and it's a way of having a walk around. And we're finding that a lot of people are maybe a bit nervous about coming for a vaccination, including children, like to be able to see where they're going and have a little bit of, previous awareness of what they're likely to experience on the day. So Queen Elizabeth Vaccination Centre is actually at this point in time, it's either the first or the second busiest site in West Yorkshire. It's proving very popular. We then have our primary care network. So this is the GP practices who have teamed together and they're operating out of 3 sites, or actually they're operating out of maybe in the future 40 or 50 sites, because what we now have is they're operating out of the big sites like Sandal Rugby Club that people may be familiar with, and Castleford Civic Centre again this year. But increasingly this year, they're also running co-administration clinics, so flu plus COVID, actually at GP practices. So again, if you're offered an appointment there, take it up, take up your flu vaccine. I think in future years, it's highly likely that Sandal will continue to run and Castleford will continue to run, but we'd like, because it's more convenient for patients, for more people to be offered the vaccination at their GP practice. And on this map, you can see there's a half moon just above Wakefield, which is dark blue. That's the vaccination centre. The green is the primary care networks, and then you can see some purples, and the purples are all the community pharmacies which are offering vaccines. So as you can see, there's now one in Castleford, out at Iredale. We've got one at Nottingley, 2 in Pontefract, including the big Pharmacy to You site at the Squash Club, 1 in Featherstone, 1 opening next week, so a brand new one in Charleston, 1 at Excel in Normanton, 1 in Ossett and 1 in Horbury. And I'm pleased to say that we have some additional new ones who will be coming on stream. And the reason I'm pleased about that is I think you can see there's kind of some green splodges on this map. And what that's telling us is the parts of our community who are best served by the different vaccination centres. And you can see if you look towards sort of the southern half of Wakefield, they don't have quite as good access as the northern half of Wakefield. And that's simply because partly these are more rural areas, but there still are villages there, but also because there aren't many community pharmacies there. What we do have is we've got another 4 community pharmacies who've applied to join the programme, and that they all nicely fit around some of these areas that aren't currently well served. So there's one at Middlestown, there's one at Netherton over in the southwest, so that improves access for us and also for an area of Huddersfield. And then we've got 2 new community pharmacies in Featherstone, one in the centre of Castleford, and then the one that I'm really pleased about is right down in the south. There will be a community pharmacy on the same site as the GP practice at South Kirkby. So we're getting towards a position where we've got an offer that is really handy. And we know every time we get a new community pharmacy, somebody comes in for their first dose who's never actually been able to access the vaccine before. So it's really, really good news. We will need to run some pop-ups in some areas because we're not going to have great coverage around North Emsall and Upton in particular. Possibly something around Whalley and maybe Havercroft as well. So we'll be aiming to have some pop-ups there just to make sure that we haven't left anybody who maybe, you know, literally cannot get to a vaccination service somewhere. Okay. So as I said, we're very busy at the moment. We're waiting, asking patients to wait to be invited. However, very soon we'll be offering some walk-in capacity as well. So we're aiming to have something that's really, really easy for people to get to. Okay, that's everything that I was hoping to cover, but I'm very happy to take any questions if people want to put their hand up or ask something in the chat.
That's fabulous, thank you, Sarah. And if you're not sure how to put your hand up, because it's ages since I've used Zoom, just shout out. That's fine. I can't see anything coming up in the chat. It looks like at the moment we have no questions, Sarah, but if we do receive any questions, I will forward them to you, and I know that you'll respond. Lovely. So thank you very much. That was really interesting. And I'm glad that you mentioned about Hemsworth and the area around South Kirkby and South Emsall, because they often get forgotten about, don't they, and say everything's up at the top of the district and we get forgotten about. So it's fabulous that that's addressed.
If anyone lives down in that area and has a very friendly relationship with their community pharmacist, really encourage them. We'd love for them to contact us to join the programme because we'd love to have better coverage.
There you go, fantastic, thank you. That's great, thank you very much. So we've just got a couple more slides to share, and this is a bit from me. Because this was our last scheduled meeting, I wanted to just say thank you to each and every one of you, and quite a few of you that are on the call today have been with us all this time, so thank you so much. And I do know that you share messages with other people in your own circles, because messages get back to me and say, John sent me this information, Tracy. We're like, yay, thank you, John. So I do get to know that you're working hard in the background, so thank you for that. And we value it so much that we don't want to lose you, actually. And I am aware that our colleagues in public health will be focusing on the coming months on winter resilience, and that will be all sorts of issues. We do know that people are really worried about finances, about being able to pay to heat, and there'll be very sad options for people about eating and heating. So we at the local authority are doing all that we can, and we've lots of information that we can share, and we want to get it out to as many people as possible. So there'll be information about warm homes. We want to try, every year we're aware that sadly there are excess winter deaths, and that means people die purely because they've been cold and they can't keep the houses warm. And that is so sad in this day and age, but you know, it happens, and we want to try and reduce that as much as we can. As Sarah mentioned, we want to encourage people to have flu jabs, because doing that now will protect them for the future, for the winter. People will be having debt, and all of that impacts on your mental health and your well-being. So the communications team will be working with our officers in public health to develop a programme and looking at possibly a subject per month. And I understand that there's been some talks with Rhubarb Radio about developing some podcasts as well. So we'd very much value your involvement in shaping and sharing any of these messages, and potentially inviting you to monthly meetings, and they will be themed, so you know what the theme is and whether you want to come or not. So just as a rough guide, your involvement could include giving us your ideas about topics, because you might come up with things that are important to you, your family, your community, that are not on our list, and that we can look at that. As ever, when you've reported to us local issues where people have either not understood messages, there's been miscommunication or something gone wrong, that's been valuable so that we can target certain areas with certain messages. So we're always willing to have feedback from you. Any other ideas welcome. So what we can offer, I've been a bit cheeky here, guys, because I've put social media training for your group or your organisation, which has been offered. And it could be a social media training session for all of our COVID champions, for example, because I'm definitely going to take up that offer. Also, the offer to work with Rhubarb Radio, potentially visit the studio there to record a podcast with us and have a bit of fun there. And I've snuck this one on Claire, so close your ears, but I've put potentially a small pot of funding, particularly for groups, to enable them to engage with us, because I know in the past people with hearing impairments or with vision impairments or other hidden impairments have found it difficult to accept, receive, understand messages. And we've worked hard on that to try and influence that and make sure that people get messages in different formats. It won't be a lot of money, and I haven't agreed it with the senior managers, but I'm sticking it on there just in case people want to write to me and say, Tracy, we would love to do this work with you, but we need X amount of money. Let's have a look at it. I can't promise, but I can promise that I will look at it and consider it.
As somebody said to me, Tracy, if you don't buy a ticket, you don't know what will happen, do you? So.
Absolutely, you've got to be in it to win it. So I can't promise, but I will definitely do my best. So I think I can stop sharing that now. Let me look. Stop sharing. So here's over to you guys. Thank you very much for sitting very patiently and listening to what our speakers have got to say. If you've got any comments or questions, you can ask them now. We've got Pam with a hand up. Yes, Pam.
Hi, Tracy. I wonder if it would be possible to ask people in public health if they could provide sort of a very small shareable social media sort of announcement telling people what actually is the safe and reasonable temperatures they need to keep their home, to keep healthy during the winter. You know, talking to some older people, you get the answer, oh, I grew up with ice on the inside of the window, it never hurt me, sort of thing. And I think it'd be good to have a clear message about what is, you know, not what is nice and cozy, thank you very much, but what is safe.
Absolutely, that's a really great point, Pam. Thank you for that, because my mum, bless her, before she passed away, she was one of those sat with a blanket and saying, hey, lass, we've been through a war. And I'm like, Mum, you need to have it at a certain temperature. And I got her one of these. It was from our energy saving team at the time, and it's a little thermometer that tells you the safe zone where you need to keep safe.
Excellent.
I don't think we've got any more of these. I did ask, but you know, it's something we can look at. It's a really important issue. So thank you for raising that, Pam. We've got Emma on the call from our communications team. I'm not sure whether she can say yes or no to that, but I'm sure she'll take that back to the team and we'll see what we can do. Fabulous, thank you. Claire?
I think what I just want to say, Pam, you're absolutely right. I think what I want to say is I can take that back. I know there are a lot of colleagues in public health, as Tracy said, who are working on doing everything they can do around making sure that people can afford to keep warm this winter. And you're absolutely right. I grew up with ice on the inside of the windows too. And it's the difference between can you have the heating on and walk around in a t-shirt, which is what my teenage daughter thinks you can do, and how do you actually keep yourself warm with layers and with the heating, but make sure that you're at a safe temperature. So I'll take that back to the people who are doing all the work, and I would hope they've got it on their radar already, but if they haven't, I'll certainly feed it in.
Thank you.
That's fabulous. Thank you very much, Claire. So we've got one success story, hopefully, on the go already, because that's a really important issue, particularly for older people who are vulnerable. And I saw a little video clip recently about someone who was having treatment at home for kidney failure. She was on a dialysis machine, and she was saying that people with kidney problems have to keep warm because their bodies haven't got that facility to keep warm, and she was worried about keeping a machine going and keeping herself warm, and she won't be on her own, will she? Some very sad situations.
Yes, and medical machinery is another thing that we're all aware of.
Yeah. So that's a great point. Thank you very much. So we've got that on our list. Just as a guidance, can people just either show us a thumbs up or put a yes in the comment to say, would you be happy to stay with us, please? If we can give you a list of things that we're focusing on, would you please stay and engage with us? I've got 2 yeses, 3 yeses. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. I will be, as usual, writing out, and I do accept, guys, that I do send you a lot of emails. I'm aware of that, and maybe we can look at if we try to reduce that, maybe if people think they're getting a bit too much. Thank you. Somebody else has said yes and a smiley face. Thank you, Tim. As ever, please do get in touch with me. My phone number's on the bottom of my email signature. You can contact us at ccc@wakefield.gov.uk. Any comments, good, bad and ugly, will be well received. So thank you everybody for attending. Look after yourselves, get your boosters when they're sent to you, and take your flu jabs as well. Keep safe and stay well. Thank you very much. Bye everyone.